Ask Earl Anything. This is the show where your questions make the show. On this week's show, I've got a few questions. Just a couple little update on some stuff. I just got out of Steve Gadd week. I had a great week. I found a few covers I had done that were kind of like lost, and I did a bunch of covers. Got some good feedback from everybody. It was definitely a long week of me showing just Steve Gadd type stuff, but I try to really bring in some eclectic Steve Gadd stuff. So thank you all that watched. I appreciate it. It's the summer months and everybody's kind of waning, with YouTube and being outside, and it's summer. It's time to go to the beach and all that good stuff. And I will be doing the same things. I've got some plans for some travel and some other things. So this Ask Earl Anything, I'm going to try to catch up on all the questions I've got as best I can. And there's one question in particular that I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it justice. So I probably will have to do a special Ask Earl Anything or a drum talk segment on that one question. I'll explain it to you when I get to it. But I've got a lot of questions, so let's get right into the show this week. My first question comes from Brian Corey, and he asks a great question a lot of people ask a lot of times. I'm looking to buy a kit. I'd like it to be $600 to $700 range. What's the best bang for my buck? So Brian, here's my take on the $600 to $700 range. Now, if it includes cymbals, it's going to be pretty darn hard to do that. If it's just a shell pack kit, there's some really great options in that range that I would tell you. Now, if you are looking for something with cymbals, the best way to get something with decent cymbals and a decent kit is to actually go look at Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, or not so much eBay these days, something local, somebody selling a drum kit in distress that has some decent cymbals. That's the best way to go about that. And a used kit will work in those situations. And sometimes you can find some great used kits for reasonable money. Even though there's a lot of people selling used kits that are really garbage kits and they think they're gonna get big money for it. That's just a load of crap. Don't buy that stuff. Now, if you're looking new, we'll talk like you're asking a new question. My favorite kits in this price range are, I like the Catalina Club kit. Now, of course, the Catalina Club kits, I'm talking about the Jazz Catalina Club kit with the 20 or the 18-inch bass drum, 12, 14 tom. The snare is nothing to talk about, but the kit pack, shell pack is really good in that range. It's a mahogany shell, and I really dig that one. The next one I would say is anything that you can find from Yamaha, Gretsch, Tama in that price range. They've got a couple kits. Yamaha used to have a rock kit. It was like a rock tour series, I guess, kit. And I'm not sure if it was birch or I think it might have been birch shells. It was birch or maple. It sounded really great. I helped a friend buy that kit a few years back. Tama used to have the Silver Star kits, which they were in the Jazz configurations. I thought they were excellent kits for the money. They were birch shells. The Catalina Clubs are mahogany shells. That's kind of, those would be the kits I'd be looking for. I mean, it really depends on what sizes you're looking for too. If you're looking for generally small sizes, there are probably a couple other companies that have kits in that price range. Like you could probably even get a PDP kit, Pacific Drum Company kit. That would probably work. It's not DW quality. It's made in Mexico, but all these drum kits are going to be made in China or Taiwan or somewhere. You're not talking about anything made in the U.S. at this point. So, of the quality I've seen, the Yamaha in this price range, the Gretsch Catalina in this price range are all good kits. So that's the way I would go. I've always thought about picking up a Catalina kit, just to have a Gretsch Catalina kit, kick around kit. And if I didn't have that little maple Gretsch kit that I'm using on everything now, when I do any work, I probably would buy one. Because I don't want to take this kit out anymore. This kit's kind of for the studio. I've taken it out a few times the last few years. Not what I want to do. I don't really want to take this out to play out in, in public, or, especially if I'm doing outdoor gigs and that kind of stuff. This kit's really not, it's not, I'm trying to baby it now. It's 40 years old. This is a 40-year-old drum kit. So even though it sounds great and it looks great and most guys think it's kind of new, it's not. It's 40 years old. So, but that's my answer to your question, Brian. That's what I would do. My next question comes from Lori Jones, and Lori says, this was after my interview in Toronto, so let me find the question in here. Really great show on the subject I really need to know, a subject I really know nothing about. Okay, that's funny. I have never mixed a kit, so I'm interested in learning something like recording and positions and types of microphones. And if I were ever to record my daughter, at least I'd have something to work on. From your interview in Toronto, I guess that was with Mikey V, and to this lesson type structure adds more variety to the show. Would be great to see continue all these formats. For future shows, would be interested to know your preference with drum pedals, beaters, techniques. I'm a single pedal player, playing blues and rock mainly. Have a great weekend too. Okay, so that was a big comment / kind of quasi question. As far as getting into the recording of drumming and stuff for doing YouTubes and stuff, you could start with just a good camera mic, like a Zoom camera, not for the camera portion of it, but I have a Zoom camera. It's got a good sound. You could have like a two mic Zoom that would kind of get a great sound of the kit in the room. If you're going to get into the miking thing, then you got to get into what they call the DAWs, the DAWs, digital audio workstations. And then you're getting into mics on each drum and overheads and kick drum and snare drum. That's really important. And a decent computer to run it, and decent speakers to listen back in, or headphones. And definitely learning how to use the DAW with all the compression and the reverb and all that stuff. That's a little bit more, and it's not something I can explain in like 2 minutes, that's for sure. Matter of fact, I have a question from Zach's Drums. He wants to know about reverb and compression, and to be honest, I can't do that any justice in this format here. So I guess what I'm saying is, maybe what you're really asking me for is to do a special one on DAWs, miking, some mixing techniques so you can see what I'm doing. So that will be a special show that I will do after my vacation and my time away. So probably sometime in August I'll get to that. But at this point, really can't cover that in depth, I do have a video I did early on, about a year and a half ago, where I talk about mixing drums and my DAW, and I still don't have it figured out how to actually take a live session from my DAW and also record me speaking at the same time and that whole thing. So that's really the thing. And I know there's guys who know how to do that. I should probably go watch a lesson on YouTube on how to, do a lesson off the computer and speak over it. That's the next thing I got to get into. That and OBS, live streaming. So there's two little goals of mine. So this will force me into one of them. Maybe it'll even force me into OBS. OBS is a software for doing live streaming. I have some really great ideas for some Earl Ask Anything shows. And I have a couple really good professional friends that I can think of 4 pros that have said, yeah, they would do it. So if I ever get this off the ground, they're not high-end, it's not like GAD type interviews, but you never know. Once you start doing some other interview type things and people see what you do, I know guys just call up these guys, and then all of a sudden when they're hawking something, they say, yeah, we'll come on your show. So I think that's kind of cool. So who knows? Maybe I will get a GAD someday, if I become a good interviewer. I'm not really a good interviewer now. I'm learning how to interview. I'm learning that. I had a lot of fun with the Mikey interview. And you know, I also think interviewing some people from the community is kind of cool, and I have done that. You know, I have done a few interviews. I've done my friend Marco, I've done Johnson drummer, Michael Johnson last year. Now I've done Mikey V, so I think there might be some room for that too to do, but it's learning OBS software, and then it's learning the software that basically captures what you're doing on the screen and also recording the sound. That's the key, because I really want to record what I'm doing, the moves I'm making, and make sure I can marry the tracks together, you know what I mean, so it works and it sounds good. So I haven't figured that out yet. So Laura, you really that's a challenge to me. I'll have to try to figure out how to do that, but that's not going to happen for this show. Now, as far as pedals go, my favorite pedal is a Tama Iron Cobra Flexi Flyer pedal. And Flexi Flyer's got the Flex, or they call it a Flex Glide pedal, I guess. They used to call it a Flexi Flyer. That was the first version of the strap pedal. So my Iron Cobra's got a strap on it, but I just as much use my chain drive Camco by Tama pedal that I've had for years and years and years. I have an old Camco pedal with a strap drive that I use sometimes for practices and leave it places sometimes. And I've got a double pedal with the Iron Cobra. So I would say my gigging pedal is the Camco chain drive pedal. Now, as far as beaters go, the beater I use on this kit is a square felt beater. It's a Zorro beater, and made by Danmar. It's flat and it's square. It's a square beater. It really has a nice punch to it. I've also got a few very boutique Vic Firth beaters. One is the Vic's Kicks beater, which looks like a stick. And somebody asked me a question about this in Steve Gadd week. It's in the video for Dirty Old Man. You'll see, actually, I'm filming my foot, which was kind of fun. I used my Zoom camera, and the Zoom camera looks like crap. That's why I don't do this very often. I have the camera, I just don't do it. Believe it or not, my camera setup is pretty amateur for some of the guys doing YouTubes. You know, I have friends that use like 3 and 4 GoPros and stuff, like above and top and sideways and all over the place. And what am I using? I'm using an iPhone XR, you know. So that's my main camera these days, is the XR. I've got a DSLR. I used to have an iPhone 6. I don't know where that is. I'll pull that out. I try to use my iPad occasionally, but this iPad does some weird things with audio. But another cool beater. I got some really cool beaters, if I'm going to get into beaters. The beater I've got on my Camco chain drive pedal that I take out to gigs now, it's got a Rogers beater on it. It's the new Rogers Dynomatic pedal beater, which has got the spring loaded. You can go from the flat plastic side to the felt side, and you just push the head, turn the head. You don't have to do anything, and it just moves. So I can reach down and turn the head. Great beater for live gigs, and I use that on my live pedal. I've also got that other Vic Firth beater it's kind of like oblong. It's like round, almost a circle. It's like almost like a lollipop. It looks like it's flat on one side and kind of rounded on the other side. Sometimes I use it the rounded way. Sometimes I use it the flat way, so it's getting the flat hit on the bass drum head. You've got to have your pedal set up in such a way where you hit flat, otherwise it doesn't work. But those are my favorite beaters these days and pedals. So I hope that helps, Lori. But great question. Thank you so much. This is the Zach question. Zach asked me to do a lesson on compression and DAWs and reverb and DAWs. He said, I know you have presets for your audio. Maybe you can tell us what your settings are, or maybe you can listen to some of my last covers. Tell me what you think I need to change, if anything. Now, I've listened to a couple of your covers. There's nothing that's jumping out that you're doing anything wrong. I've got guys that love to tell me when I do things wrong on my covers, so I'm not that guy to anybody else, but I haven't heard anything, Zach, that's wrong, like too much reverb. The way you use reverb is, if you look at a mixing board's got a channel fader. Now there's two ways of using reverb plugins in a DAW. One is to put the reverb on the channel strip. If you do that, you're taking a plugin that uses a lot of processor and you're wasting it on one channel. So most people do not put the reverb on one channel, unless they're doing a very small project. The way I use reverb is what they call aux sends. And you basically have an auxiliary channel, is where I put my reverb, and then I send the signal of the snare drum to the reverb channel using a bus. So it's bus 1. I use bus 1 and I send from bus 1 using a knob on the board. It's got a little knob on my virtual board. I put it up to usually about -20, -15 area, and I send the snare drum signal over to the aux send channel where I have my reverb picked. The aux channel is at 100%. It's at 0 unity gain, right at 0, and it's set up for full on. And then I adjust my reverb in the track sounds using that knob in the channel, sending it and returning it back to the channel. And that's how I do my reverbs. Compression, I usually set the compression on each channel individually. I have a compressor for each channel. So there's a kick compressor, a snare compressor, but one of the other secrets of compression is you can use multiple compressors to get that compression scheme. And the way you do that is you have a master bus compressor. So what I have on my master channel, which is usually, it's always at unity gain, is I basically have a compressor there, and that's the mixed bus compressor, they call it. So I'm actually compressing kick drum, snare drum, toms, whatever I want to compress, and then I'm sending it to the master bus channel, and I'm compressing it again. And that's how you get that sound you get. Plus I use tape compression with a tape emulator, and then I have a limiter on the end to get the punch out of it. And this is why I need to do this in a lesson format where you can watch what I'm doing on the screen and hear it in your headphones or your speakers or whatever. So I'll work on that, Zach. So your question isn't retired yet. It'll just not answered completely. My next question comes from a guy named Carmen IP. And Carmen IP says, do you have some brush video recommended to watch? Now, Carmen, I've got a whole slew of brush videos, and the best way to learn how to play brushes is to watch people playing brushes in music, okay? That way you get the sound and what they're going for when you're watching them do it. I've got at least, I'd say 5 to 10 videos that are brush videos, and some of them get a lot of hits, so you might want to watch some of those videos to get some ideas of how to play brushes. As far as for me, there's 2 main videos that I would recommend that were purchasable videos. You may find them on the internet, you may not. One is the series that Steve Smith and Adam Nussbaum put together. I think it's called, oh gosh, what is it called? I have the DVD. It's got like 6 great artists. Joe Morello's on it. Bunch of great guys are on this. Some of these guys have passed since 2006 when it came out. But it's like the primer on brush playing. So if you want to watch a lot of guys showing their different techniques, plus Steve Smith and Adam Nussbaum, there's 8 drummers on it. That's the one I would tell you to watch. In YouTube land, look up Peter Erskine. He's got a couple of great brush videos. I don't play brushes like Peter Erskine though. Okay? Peter Erskine does this with his left hand. He goes counterclockwise. So I don't know if you can see it, but he's sweeping this way. I sweep clockwise, and my right hand does counterclockwise. So his is the opposite, and I can't even do it. But if you want to switch it around, you can get some ideas of how to play. I play kind of in a clockwise fashion. By the way, there's no right way to play brushes. Absolutely no right way. Don't let anybody tell you there is. There's not. It's just what you learn and what you feel comfortable with. And then it's figuring it out. There's a German guy, I don't know, remember his name is Florian something. He's got a brush video. I've watched some of it. I've also watched Clayton Cameron's video. I used to have that video too at one point. I don't know where that is. That's probably in VHS somewhere. Clayton Cameron does all these tricks with, you know, these kind of brush trick things. Really cool tricks. How to get like rolls and stuff. But truthfully, that one master class in brush playing with Steve Smith and Adam Nussbaum, it's by Hudson Music, does it. And Ed Thigpen's video, if you can find it online. Ed Thigpen was another master brush player that passed away a long time ago. He used to play with the Oscar Peterson trio. Those are all great videos. But there's so much stuff on playing brushes out there, it's not even funny. I would listen to the masters. Oh, one other master you want to look at besides Peter Erskine is Jeff Hamilton. Oh my gosh. You got to watch Jeff Hamilton if you're going to get into brushes. So those are the guys I look at. Great stuff. Great question, Carmen. I hope that helps, and I hope you see this. My next question comes from Robert Cozart, and he asked a pretty crazy question. And he goes, have you ever considered making covers using small cymbals versus large cymbals, single ply heads versus multi-ply heads, nylon tips versus wood? Just some thoughts. Also, red drums versus blue drums, laugh out loud. Have you ever used T-towels for muting method, the Ringo method? And the funny thing is, I don't know if I've done videos with a T-towel, but I've used T-towels on gigs, especially playing in churches and stuff. I've done that to mute floor toms and snare drums. As far as smaller cymbals, yeah, I haven't done a cover with one. I think the smallest cymbal in a cover I've used is a 14. I have a 14-inch Zildjian I used in one video a long time ago. I have a 15-inch AAX Studio Crash. I used to have a 14-inch AAX Studio Crash. Matter of fact, for years I used to use small cymbals. Small crash cymbals were a big part of what I used to do. The biggest being like a 17 for a while. I used to use a 19-inch ride. So my Sabians all had small cymbals. I've since gotten into the big cymbals. So I'm really into big crash cymbals now. This is a 19, this is an 18. I've got 17s, I've got 16s, and I've got 20-inch crash cymbals. And these 20s and my 24-inch Paiste Giant Beat Multi is a monster crash if I wanted to use it that way. I don't really think of it as a crash cymbal, but I do crash off of it just like I crash off this 22 in my Big Beat Crash. So yeah, I've done that. I've done covers that way. I do like red drums. This is kind of a reddish color, but I had a beautiful set of Blue Sparkle Ludwigs that I missed to death. So I like those too. I wish I had some more Blue Sparkles to play on some videos. Anyhow, yes, I will do some videos and I'll specifically try to do that. As far as nylon versus wood, I'm not a big nylon fan. I think I have a couple pairs. I definitely have a couple pairs somewhere in here. I can't think of a video I've done anything but wood tips. It's just varying degrees of wood tips for me. Single ply heads versus double ply heads. I have done drum covers with ambassadors. I used to have ambassadors on this kit for a while. I've had emperors on this kit, and right now I've got ambassador and vintage coated heads on it, which are a 2-ply head, so they don't really fall into it. Snare drum is a 1-ply head. I'm looking at possibly putting clear ambassadors on the concert tom kit, going for that Phil Collins thing. He used clear ambassadors from what I understand. So that's a thought process. Someday I may do that. I have one guy that keeps writing me, he just hates the way my concert toms look with all the tape all over them. Can't promise that the tape will change once I put new heads on it though. Tape is how you get that sound from the 70s. I don't know if you realize that. That's how you get it. You put tape and stuff all over your drums. By the way, that's the new thing. So I see guys taping up all kinds of stuff now. That's the new thing. Tape cymbals up, tape the heads up, stack cymbals on top. There's no rules anymore. Every rule that was used in the 60s and 70s to make great sounding records is being used again today. So, next question comes from Adam, AR drummer. And he said, nice upload. Cool to learn how you mic things up. Question, since you use the butt end of your stick on your snare hits, does it feel at all odd when you do tom rolls since the sticks aren't matched? And that I thought that was a great question, Adam. And the reason why it's a great question is because I think that's how people might think about it. But believe it or not, when I play like this, it feels just as even to me as when I play like this. Okay? What I'm going for with the butt end of my stick is a sound. And I feel like the sound of the butt end on a tom is the same thing. If I want it, I get more punch out of this. I get the same out of this if I really work at it. The reason why I put it on the snare drum is that it's the sound I get with the snare. I just find this a little thin for some reason. I don't know, just a slight difference, but and it also is a feel thing. And you know, I picked that up from watching some guys play. One guy who used to always plays butt end a lot is Steve Gadd, believe it or not. Now, Steve Gadd usually plays traditional butt end. He'll turn the butt end to traditional. Okay? Now, Hal Blaine, butt end traditional. And then there's a lot of guys who play the butt end matched. But that's how I get my sound. That's how I do it. It's my sound, it's my vibe. I feel a certain way when I play that way. And I even turn it upside down for jazz tunes. Drives guys nuts. Because guys, I guess guys think the technique is got to be done the right. Everything's got to be with the tips. I don't know. For me, flipping it over feels right. Carmen Appice used to play with the butt ends of his sticks, and he used to hold his sticks like this. So you can do these twirls. I can't do it in my left hand. No matter what I do, I can't get this left hand twirl to work. Come on. Come on. Right hand, no problem. So he plays like this. And he would hit he would actually use his sticks as which I've goofed around with a little bit, but I don't find it comfortable. I digress. Sorry about that. Probably just blew out your headphones too. All right. The next question. Thank you, Adam, for that question. Next question is Billy Nolan asked me a question. He said, I have a request. So Into You by the Atlanta Rhythm Section. Well, Billy, be watching because someday it's coming out. I actually recorded it. So Into You's coming out. I got some more 70s favorites that I love. I really pulled some cool stuff out for the Steve Gadd thing. I think the Leo Sayer thing was kind of the one that kind of the icing on the cake. A lot of guys kind of dug the Leo Sayer one. You Make Me Feel Like Dancing. And I want to tell you something. That song was like butter playing that song. That is my pocket. So, I mean, I've actually been copying that kind of feel for so long. I didn't sweat that song, not a lick. I found doing the Grover Washington Jr. tune, Just the Two of Us, was actually torture to play. Because I was trying to get clean with his foot. That was the problem. If I was on a drumless track, it would have felt like Earl and it would have been fine. It would have been in there. But we're talking about milliseconds of click. Oh, that drove me crazy. Matter of fact, I had to do something in the EQ or the overheads to get that sound to sound right, to not sound, because I don't know if you realize this, but this is a microphone thing. Your bass drum mic is picking it up very tight, what you're playing. Your overheads are spaced away from it, so there's a slight delay, and I don't mess with the phase issue of that slight delay. As long as the bass sounds fat, and by the way I mic a drum kit is coincident miking. So it's right over top of the bass drum, so the bass drum hits it at the same time, so it just fattens the sound out. But with that particular cover, that little bit of distance, that millisecond off was throwing it out of whack. And it was sounding really like I was off. When I took that overhead mic sound out, I actually cut those frequencies out. The drum kit sounded tighter and it worked. And that wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. That was really hard. But you make me feel like dancing, you know, the 4 on the floor and the kind of funky, shuffly hi-hat. I could do that all day long. That's my thing. I could do that. So that was kind of the fun one. But I got some more 70s tunes coming at you. And a couple surprises too. So we'll see what happens. Mr. Dimma asked a question. This is for the next Ask Earl Anything. This is the one that's officially for this show. Is the difference in sound between a 20 and a 22 is big or not so much? I will say this to you, that it depends on how you, not mic the kick drum, how you make your kick drum sound. All right? I've heard 22s that they just sound so small because they're so filled with blankets and all kinds of stuff. The interesting thing about my Gretsch 22, the one that's on the kit in the Studio B, the concert tom kit, is I've got a fat pillow in it and that thing still punches right through your head. That is a Gretsch bass drum. Okay? If I take the pillow out, I could get that Bonham sound with it. You know, that big two-headed Bonham sound. If I put two heads on it that didn't have a hole in it, I would get a similar sound. It wouldn't be as big as a 26, but it would be humongous. I could get a humongous double-headed sound out of it. This is a double-headed kick, 14 by 20 kick, with an E-man head on the back. Front head's got the Power Stroke 3 Renaissance Ambassador head. It's got a little hole cut out in it, and I've got one of those Evans pillows touching the front head, not the back head, the front head. And there's nothing on the back head except the E-man. And this drum is punchy. Punchy, fat, and sounds right for the room. So I think this 20 is huge. I've had guys come in here and they love the sound of this 20. They think it's got the sound they're looking for. That 22, it's got a certain sound. It all depends on what you want to get out of it, Mr. Dimma. It really does. If you're trying to get a really big sound, it's how you tune it. You know, if you're looking to get a Bonham-y sound, you got to have two heads, no hole cut in the front, no pillow in it. It's going to get a different vibe to it. You also have to play with a different technique. Like this drum is set up for my technique. I kind of bury the beater a lot, or I hit it hard and pull off a lot. So there's like that. But sometimes I play and I pull off the head. So I get the poo sound, you know, the bass, the 18-inch bass drum jazz sound, especially if I'm doing, you know. I'm not burying the beater at that point. I'm just feathering the bass drum. And that's buried. Anyhow, I think it's preference. I love my 20. I love having a 22. I love my 18. And I make that 18 sound big like this 20. I mean, where I play in church, I've got just an E-man head, nothing in that bass drum, and that thing sounds punchy as anything, goes right through the room. Or if you had a 22, you'd have to put a pillow in it. That's the other thing. You have to make compromises when you're playing in certain rooms to mute things down. I used to play with Swigs, and we rehearsed in this little bedroom. We had a 22-inch kick drum in there, and I used to put my cymbal bag on the front head to mute the sound. And it worked. It was a great, and then they said, wow, that's cool. That sounds so much better now the way you're playing it. So you got to have the ear to hear that. All right. It's probably a long Ask Earl Anything. My last question is a question that got sent in to me by a guy named Alan Ford. It came in on my Drum Talk website. And he was asking me really a question about Jeff Porcaro. And Jeff Porcaro is a favorite of mine. So I said I would answer it in this video. And he's going to be the first name I'm going to put up, even though it's the last thing I'm talking about. If any of you know about my videos, I have a video on Jeff Porcaro. It was done 2 years ago. It was done when I had 50 subscribers, maybe. I don't know. Maybe 100. I don't think so at that point. Me just talking to a camera. Some of my early Earl talking to the camera stuff. There's a couple mistakes in it, but I talk from the cuff. I make mistakes. You guys all know that. Anybody who watches this show knows it's not perfect. You are getting my opinion on things. But Jeff is a favorite of mine. So let me talk a little bit about Jeff. He had some really great questions. The first question was this. He says, for example, what kind of drums to buy to get close to his thing? He wanted to get drums that were kind of the Jeff Porcaro thing. Choose the right snare, cymbals, get close to his Peisty 2002 setup, his heavy 14-inch hi-hats. What about his setup? How did he make his 13-inch toms sound like that? It is a tuning thing of sorts. How should someone tune toms to get that sound? How did I go through all your videos? It will take me weeks to get through all those videos. Maybe you can discuss it somewhere. I'll have to check it out. But if you get my drift, it's all about Jeff. Now, I know he played a Pearl MLX, Brady Custom, and a Gretsch, all that stuff. But what drums would get me close to him? Or it doesn't matter because it's all in the tuning, that lower thing. So that's my question. And again, love your show. Keep on grooving. Then he added 2 more things. He said 2 more things. Did he use maple, birch, or mahogany drums? What heads would take me in that direction? Because different heads take you in various directions. So just go in deep into Porcaro. All right, Alan. This is my depth of Porcaro today. All right. First off, Jeff Porcaro played a lot of different drums. He played birch drums. He played mahogany drums. He played maple drums. Now, I will tell you that what I've heard about his studio playing and his studio kits, he was really into that Gretsch drum sound for the studio. And there are plenty of pictures of him playing Gretsch drums in the studio. His normal sizes was a 22-inch kick drum, okay? I've never really seen him play a 24, but he may have. I know he owned a 26 because there's an article, the first article I ever read about Jeff Porcaro, he talked about having four or five different drum kits. One was an old Camco kit, one was a Slingerland kit with a 26-inch bass drum. He had some Ludwig kits. So he had Ludwig maple kits. He might have had a Ludwig mahogany kit. I know he played maple drums for Pearl, okay? I don't know if he had any fiberglass drums. I know at one point he was playing Yamaha recording customs. You look at the back of Toto 4 with Africa and Rosanna on it. And you basically have a Yamaha recording custom kit. And that's a birch shell kit. But in the studio, he was known to play Gretsch drums, and they were maple Gretsch drums. His favorite sizes were 10, 8x12, 9x13, 14x14, 16x16. I believe his 10-inch toms were 8x10 when they were double-headed, but he started playing this 3 toms up top setup when he had single-headed toms. And there's pictures of him playing single-headed toms, like an 8 and a 10, and then just going to just a 10, 12, 13, 14, 16. So that was his his setup. I'm not sure what heads he used. For a while there, he was using Ludwig medium heads, the DB750s, I think they were called, Ludwig DB750s coated. So he was probably using ambassador heads. He probably used coated emperors sometimes. He used clear heads, so he might have been using clear ambassadors or clear emperors. I don't remember ever seeing him playing pinstripe heads, but he could add anything for heads. Same with the kick drum. Matter of fact, I'll tell you one of the things that was a big kick drum sound of the 70s and 80s was an ambassador coated on the back for a kick drum head. Remember, the power stroke heads and the E-man heads were nowhere to be found back in the 80s. The only thing you had that had that kind of ring on it was a pinstripe. And guys started going to pinstripes for bass drums back in the 80s. But the sound of the 70s, you still had guys using calfskin heads. So Hal Blaine had a calfskin head, I know, on one of his bass drums. He had a Duraline head on another bass drum. Duraline was this woven Kevlar head for years. He had that on one of his bass drums. I think it's on the kit that's in that book called Crash. Is that Kevlar bass drum head is on his 22-inch Blue Sparkle Ludwig kit. Jeff was a big fan of Hal Blaine and Jim Gordon and Jim Keltner, so I am sure he was using probably a single ply bass drum head for a while before he moved to double plies. That was kind of the sound of the 70s. So, and I will tell you, this year I had for a while, I had on this bass drum an ambassador bass drum head. And that ambassador bass drum head was just amazing sounding, you know? So that is a whole nother vibe, going with a thin ambassador, you know, medium weight ambassador on your bass drum. Just a thought, guys. Everybody goes power stroke and E-mans, but if you want to get into some of that craziness. As far as his tuning, the one tuning technique I know of Jeff was he would get the drum even, and then he would do this. He would take the tom and he would go, he'd take one of his lugs and he'd detune a lug. So he found that spot that he liked it. As opposed to keeping all the lugs the same pitch, he would detune a lug. And he found that spot. So that's a Jeff Porcaro thing, is to detune one of the lugs. And he was known to have, you know, tight lugs around most of the drum, and then one side, like right in front of him, he'd detune a lug. So that was one of his tuning techniques. By the way, I use that technique a lot. A lot of my heads, I've got a couple lugs that are detuned from the original setup of it. As far as Paiste cymbals went, he had a set of 602 hi-hats, 13-inch heavies, and then he had a set of 14-inch 2002 heavies that he used. But he was known to use whatever hi-hats he felt like using. He's also, in the 1988 Modern Drummer, he talks about having a set of KZ hi-hats, 13-inch KZs, Zildjian. Even though he was a Paiste endorser, he talked about KZs. It was in the picture of the Pearl kit they had in the picture. And here's another one. He had a set of UFIP hi-hats, heavy UFIPs that he found somewhere in Italy. I think he was traveling Europe and he got a set of UFIPs that he used occasionally. But he was a Paiste player. He liked 602s. He liked 2002s. He liked the Paiste Signature Series before he was a big proponent of that before he passed away. So you can go down any of those lines and you're going into Jeff territory right there. Blue labeled 602s, red labeled 2002s, Paiste Signatures are all in his wheelhouse of what he played, cymbal wise. He was known for playing Pearl drums, but even his Pearl kits were customized. There's a guy that makes pork pie drums. And I do know his name, and it's just it's throwing me. If Mike Frisano ever starts watching this show again, Mike Frisano is was an endorser of pork pie drums. I'll say it that way. He was an endorser of pork pie drums for years. Bill Detmore. And Bill Detmore did a lot of work on Jeff Porcaro, and there's a podcast called I'd Hit That. Now, there's a lot of drum podcasts out there, but if you're a guy that really likes podcasts and you like hearing about drummers and drummer interviews that are unique, I'd Hit That. This guy has the best interviews. They are incredibly great podcasts. He did one with Bill Detmore this 2018 he did it. And Bill talked about the light blue pearl kit that Bill Detmore made for Jeff's 1990-91 tour with Toto. The one that you see the European videos, he's playing Africa and Rosanna. Why Rosano? I'm thinking about New Jersey, Rosanos. I'm thinking about New Jersey, but it's Rosanna. You know I don't edit stuff, so it's going to be there. It's just the way life is for me. I don't edit things. But that blue pearl kit was Keller shells. I believe it was Keller shells that Bill Detmore custom painted and put pearl hardware on. And that kit doesn't even have pearl badges on it. So I think Jeff was getting tired of pearl by that point in time. Who knows what would have happened if he hadn't passed. Maybe he wouldn't have been a pearl guy for much longer. But he died being a pearl guy, so pearl said nice things about him. But I will tell you that Jeff Porcaro rack, the original drum rack for pearl, is no longer called the Jeff Porcaro rack. So I have my theory on that too, and I've spewed that a few times, I think. I know he used to play, if you want to get into Jeff's stuff, I know he used to play a Regal Tip 8A drumstick for years. That was his stick. I don't know if Regal Tip still makes the 8A, but that was the Jeff Porcaro drumstick. And a lot of times he used the 4 toms. It was 10, 12, traditional size 13, 14 by 14 floor tom. And occasionally it would be the 16 by 16 next to it. And occasionally I guess he flipped them or over, maybe the 16 over here. But I think he was more of a 14 by 14 guy in most of the shots I've seen. Anyhow, that's some of my Jeff's knowledge. I'll call it Jeff knowledge. He also liked big crash cymbals. So if you're going to go Paiste 2002s, you got to get a 20, you got to get a 19, an 18. You got to get big cymbals. He liked big crash cymbals. That was another part of his thing, was the big ones. So I hope that helps. Oh, snare drum. Almost forgot the snare drum. He was a big fan of the Radio King snare drum. And matter of fact, he had an old Radio King that was customized for him. Took the wrap off and did the shell and put the bearing edges and put the snare strainer on it. It was a 1-ply shell. It was a 7x14. He used that a lot. I think it might be in his drum video too. The one he did for Drum Licks, which is where he's burping all the time. That's a funny video. I think he might be using that Radio King. If he's not, he's using a Pearl in that video. But oh, you know what I think he is using in that video? I think he's using a free floater. He's using a Pearl free floating piccolo in that video. But he was big into that Radio King. He had a Radio King. But he would use, he had lots of drums. He was a guy who had lots of drums for a while there. Anyhow, that's it. That's my Jeff knowledge. I think I touched on everything about the kit. Thank you for watching Ask Earl Anything. I know it went long. If you're a Jeff guy, you got to wait to the end. Sorry about that. Your questions make the show. The more questions I have, the better the show is. And I can do a show. If I don't have questions, I can't do a show. Anyhow, you'll probably see my next show in August, unless I get so many questions that I have to do something from a hotel room somewhere. But anyhow, thank you so much. And you guys have a great summer. Until I see you in August, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.
Feel alright, I know that.